Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's mute our mics, please. My name is Oyin Fashobon. So we're going to start very soon, a brief introduction, because we have so many things to cover today. My name is Oyin Fashobon. I'm the Director for Programs and Partnership with Datalium. Uh, can we can we please mute our mics? Good. So our mics are mute. So Datalium is a data science academy. We try to get data, analyze data, train people on how to get data, analyze data, and make sense out of it. Going with what has happened in our country for a few days now, we understand the place of data. So data is not just it's everything you can gather from anywhere, which includes what is in the constitution, what our budget says, everything, really, everything. And that is what has inspired us to come together and say, let us teach ourselves. Every one of us here is learning on what exactly is governance about. Okay, so these guys, the older guys, always say, you people don't know what you're talking about. Have you even read your constitution? Do you know what rights you have? And we know that moving forward, for us to get whatever it is we want from the government, for us to be able to demand our rights, we need to know what exactly these rights are. For us to be able to question budgets, salaries, we need to know what is backing it up, because what if tomorrow they can back it up and say they have the right to this? So we know where exactly the problem is coming from. So not to waste our time, I'd be introducing our first speaker for today. So today's session will be divided into two, so 1 hour each. Our first speaker for today would be Samson Newton. Samson Newton will be teaching us on the basic rights of the Nigerian citizen. Samson Adegboyega Newton is a principal and attorney of Newton Sampson Legal Practice. He graduated from the prestigious Babcock University, Ileshan Remo, Ogun State in 2010 and proceeded to the Nigerian Law School, Enugu campus. He was called to Nigerian Bar in 2012. He proceeded further and obtained his master's degree from the University of Lagos. Is a vibrant advocate of the protection and preservation of fundamental human rights and a stern believer that all rights should be inclusive. Despite the nature of the Nigerian democracy, he stands as a bastion for the less privileged and a defender of rights. So Samson is a lawyer, at least, a lawyer, a practicing one, and is one that is very passionate about human rights. So let's welcome Samson as he takes us on a 1 hour session on the basic rights of the Nigerian citizen. Thank you. Samson, over to you, please.
Good morning, everybody. Uh, thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege to be here and to share the little knowledge I have with the youth. We are all very angry. We are all very passionate about the growth of Nigeria and trying to push it to the next level. And that is why we have this much people coming out to learn and to know better. uh, Information is key, knowledge is power. And the more we arm ourselves with knowledge, the more we are able to take back our country from those that have threatened to put this country into continuous and perpetual slavery. So I want to welcome everyone that's on this platform to this very short time. We'll try to make it as engaging, as informative as possible. So, talking about basic rights, I would like to uh, express everything into two. Now, we have two kinds of rights in Nigeria when you talk about general rights. There's one they call the justiciable rights, and there's one they call the non justiciable rights. Justiciable rights means rights that once there's a wrong, there's a remedy. That means you can go to court, you can sue, you can sue for the violation of your rights. Non-justiciable rights means Non-justiciable rights means there are rights that you cannot sue for. So in the Nigerian Constitution, the rights are divided into two. Now, Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, which is from section, sorry, yes, from section 14 of the Constitution to 21 of the Constitution, contains what we call the non-justiciable rights. There are economic and social rights that covers your right to education, right to social amenities, right to good living, right to good governance. The Constitution recognizes these rights, but it makes it non-justiciable. That means if the government fails to do these things or to give these rights to you, you cannot sue them to court. It is non-justiciable. Now, the chapter 4 of the Constitution, which is from chapter section 33 to 46 of the Constitution, have what we call the fundamental human rights. These are justiciable rights. They are rights that once there's a violation, you can actually sue. And basically, we'll be taking this. I would focus more on the fundamental rights, which are rights that you can actually seek remedy for if there's a violation. So I will start from the section 33 of the Constitution, which allows, which gives you or provides for the right to life. Everyone, every Nigerian citizen has a right to live. It is in the Constitution, guaranteed by the Constitution. Nobody can take anybody's life anyhow. But there are exceptions to these rules. The exceptions to these rules are contained in the subsection of section 33. I don't know if I'm able to share the screen. I was going to show you because when we can download apps on Google Store and all. We have apps that have the Constitution app on Google Store. If any, most of us can download it so we can read through these things. Section 33 of the Constitution says that everybody has a right to live. It's a fundamental right. So nobody can take away anybody's life without due process. There are exceptions to this rule. The exceptions to this rule involve one, either by pronouncement of a court. So the courts can say that a person be killed. It's allowed if the person violates the criminal code, especially when there's a capital punishment involved. The court can pronounce the death penalty on him. Two, if and this is what most police use most times to cover up their devious acts, to stop the escape of an arrested person or a convict. Now, the Constitution allows that you can, the police can actually kill. That's the word. When you're trying to stop a convicted person from running away and fleeing, and so many more of these exceptions when you want to stop riots, which the Constitution allows like a legitimate wasn't. Then the third one is when you're protecting yourself. It's called self-defense. Self-defense, you're allowed to protect yourself. That if there's an harm that is commensurate that is going to take your life, if you protect yourself in that instance and you kill the other person, then uh, you're protected under the defense of self-defense. So these are many more of the exceptions that can be found in the Constitution for the right to life. After that, you have the right to freedom from degradation of personal self. Nobody. Okay, I can share my screen now. So let's see. Let me try and share the Constitution with us. I'm sorry. I'm trying to see. Yes. Okay. Yes, I can share my screen. So I'm trying to look for the constitution. You can all see it. I have the constitution here on my phone. Okay, I don't have a floating window here. Hold on, I'll just try to do that. And my screen is still shared. If you can hear me, please. Uh, I'm
Yes, we
trying to
can
share.
hear.
Yes, I'm just trying to share the screen so we can all follow along. So I'm talking out of thin air. Better still, uh, my screen is not sharing. Forgive me. Forgive me. It's just. I apologize. Please let's continue. So we have the freedom of that's your personal liberty. Nobody can detain you without due process. Personal liberty. You cannot be held on to without due process. And even if the police arrest you, the constitution says that within 24 hours they must take you to court. Now we know that in Nigeria this has not been happening. We know for a fact, and this is because the police have also, in their own way, deviously devised a means. For example, when they arrest you, they take you to court, and they don't even take you to court. They go and get a remand order saying that they are still investigating. Now, because the law allows them to investigate the crime while still keeping you, so they will tell the magistrate that they are still investigating the crime, and they will detain you for 30 days, 21 days, because they want to punish you. Now, that is the reason why most times we need to have lawyers on speed dial. Once you're arrested, call your lawyer. You have freedom of liberty. If you are arrested, if you're detained, it is supposed to be within 24 hours. But if there's no court nearby, within 48 hours. That is what the Constitution provides. But the lacuna is that there is power for the police to get a remand warrant to keep you in their custody for as long as their investigation continues. So what the lawyer will do is to fight that remand order by filing an application for habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is a Latin word that means bring the body. That means you're going to be filing an application in court saying that the court should mandate the police to charge this matter to court. Because once it gets to court, there is going to be an application for bail. The only time when an application for bail might fail is if it is in a capital case. And that's why you see most of these police people, they are very quick to label someone a murder, someone has committed murder, or someone is an armed robber. Someone is an armed robber. I don't know if you understand, because these are capital punishments that have capital offenses that come with capital punishments. And once it's a capital punishment, the magistrate court has no right over it. The magistrate court will hold on for the DPP, that's the Director of Public Prosecution, to advise. To advise. Now, it's going to take a long time for the DPP to advise. So sometimes it takes as long as 1 month, 2 months. The person is still in custody, pending the DPP's advice. So these are the tactics that they use to delay people unnecessarily. So we all need to understand this, that you have a right. And this right, if it's violated, you can seek redress. That is one. Then you also have a right. The other right that is enshrined in the Constitution is your right to privacy. I can see that they've sent us the PDF of the Constitution. Please let us all download the PDF of the Constitution so we can have a copy of this thing, so we can flow along. Are we together? If we are together, please just wave your hand. Let me know that I'm talking to people. Can you hear me all? Okay, good. So
Yes.
you have a right to privacy. Your right to privacy is enshrined in the Constitution. And that is why People are saying that there've been memos back and forth. The police cannot ask you to open your phone without a warrant. It is wrong. It is against the law. It is against the law. They cannot just demand open your phone. It is wrong. You have a right to privacy, except there's a warrant, except that there is that but the problem right now is of the old Police Act, Section 4 of the old Police Act empowers them to, if they have reasonable suspicion, of the commission of an offense, they can search without warrant. And the new police bill or the new police act that was signed into law recently by Buhari also contains such a section which empowers the police to search without a warrant if there's reasonable suspicion of the commission of an offense. So now, what is reasonable suspicion? This quota or this code of reasonable suspiciousness has been abused by the police. On different occasions, they've abused it because they just assume that because that section covers them, they can do and undo. If the police insists, you tell them that you will not open your phone unless in the presence of your lawyer. Most times, this deters them because they do not like the presence of a legal practitioner that foils their chances. You also have the right to fair hearing. This is enshrined in Section 36 of the Constitution. The right to fair hearing. You must be heard. Once the police arrest you, they must tell you the crime that you committed. It is compulsory. They must tell you the reason why they're arresting you. They must also allow you have your legal practitioner with you. Now, what most people do not realize is this. The ACJL, that's the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of Nigeria, and the Administration of Criminal Justice Law of Lagos State, says that there must be no writing of statement without the presence of a legal practitioner. There must be no writing of any statement without a legal practitioner. Should there be the writing of a statement without the presence of a lawyer, it must be video recorded to show that such a statement was written willingly and not under duress. Now, many people do not know these things, and as such, when they arrest them, they force them to write, or they write for them and they sign. If this has happened, all you need to do is to inform your lawyer. Your lawyer would, when the matter goes to court, would tell the judge that this statement was written under duress, and there will be what they call a trial within a trial. A trial within a trial. Thank you very much, Dr. Leon. I can see that you're sharing the screen. Now, this is section 36, if I'm correct. So if you read through, yes, section 36. 36 says, in the determination of a civil rights and obligation, including any question or determination by or against any government or authority, a person shall be entitled to fair hearing within a reasonable time by a court or other tribunal established by law and constituted in such a manner as to secure its independence and impartiality. 2 says, without prejudice to the foregoing provision of this section, a law shall not be invalidated by reason only that it confers on any government or authority power to determine questions arising in the application of law that affect or may affect the civil rights and obligation of a person, if such a law provides for an opportunity for the person whose rights and obligation may be affected to make representation to the administering authority before the authority makes the decision affecting the person. What this one is saying is that because a law empowers let me say, for example, a statutory body that is in charge of listening to matters, that if the law allows for the person that's going to be affected to have a representation, the law is not invalid. The constitution says that any law, let me summarize it, any law that does not allow for representation of whoever is supposed to be the defendant is an invalid law ab initio. So any law that does not allow the other party, that means the accused person or the defendant, to state his own side of the story is no law at all. So everybody is entitled to be heard. It is the principle of natural justice. The principle of natural justice, there are two principles. It says, I will say it in Latin and I will interpret it in English. It says, audi autorem patem. Audi autorem patem. It means hear both sides hear both sides. Audi autorem patem means hear both sides. Then the second one is nemo judes in casasua. Nemo judes in casasua. It means a judge. No one can be a judge in his own cause. You cannot be the judge, you cannot be the jury at the same time. No one can be a judge in his own cause. It means that once there's interest in a matter, the judge must do what? Must recuse himself or herself from the matter. You cannot judge a matter where your interest is in. This is to stop the issue of bias and partiality. The judge must be impartial. Any judge that attending to any matter must be impartial. That is the constitution. That is what the constitution is saying. That you have a right to fair hearing. We all must understand this. If you look at section 37 of the constitution, let's go to section 37. 37. 37 is the one talking about privacy of citizens. Their homes, correspondence, telephone, conversation, telegraphic communication is hereby guaranteed and protected. You have that right. That is what I was saying earlier. Nobody can ask you to open your phone without a warrant. This is what the constitution is saying. Now, 38 says, every person shall be entitled to freedom of thought, conscience, religion, including freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone in the community with others. You have a right to your thoughts and your conscience. You have a right to religion. You can decide today to worship Shango. Nobody should hold you for that. You can say today that, okay, you're no longer a Christian, you want to be a Muslim. Nobody should hold you for that. You can say today, I'm no longer a Muslim, I want to be a Christian. Nobody should hold you for that. You can say, I don't want to do anyone. I don't want to do anyone. I want to be an atheist. You are allowed. There's no rule against that. But there are also exceptions to that. If you check section 2, subsection 2 of that 38, subsection 3, those are the exceptions to the rules that we have. Let's go to 39. It said, everybody shall be entitled to freedom of expression, including freedom to hold opinions and to receive ideas and impart ideas and information without interference. Everybody has the right to expression. You have a right to say whatever you want to say. However, there are exceptions to this rule. Now, if you look at it clearly, it says section 2, subsection 2 says, without prejudice to the generality of subsection 1 of this section, every person shall be entitled to own, establish, and operate any medium for the dissemination of information, ideas, and opinion. That says, provided that no person other than the government of the federation or of a state or any other person or body authorized by the president on the fulfillment of conditions laid down by an act of the National Assembly shall own, establish, or operate a television, wireless breakdown station, a broadcasting station for any purpose whatsoever. So it says that for whoever is going to operate or run a television station or a radio station or a wireless station must do so with the approval of the federal government or the state government. And that's why you see you have NBC license. And that's why you see that there was this blanket cloak around media stations during the NSAS protest, because they were operating under the umbrella of Nigeria Broadcasting Commission, and that's why they were able to cloak them all, because there's this blanket order that allows whoever is going to operate in Nigeria to do so on the permission of the federal government. And also, now someone is asking the question. I think let us just finish. We'll attend to all the questions one after the other. And if I'm going to answer what reasonable suspicion is, let me just come back to that later. Please, can we scroll up, please? Section 39. Let's just scroll up a bit. Yeah. The next slide. The next slide, please. Yes. That's subsection 3. Subsection 3. It said, nothing in this section shall invalidate any law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. Subsection A says, for the purpose of preventing the disclosure of information received in confidence, maintaining the authority and independence of courts, or regulating telephony, wireless broadcasting, television, or the exhibition of cinematograph films, or B, imposing restriction upon person holding office under government of the Federation of a state, members of the armed forces of the Federation of members of the Nigeria or members of the Nigeria Police Force, or other government security services or agencies established by law. These are the exceptions to people that are not allowed to express themselves. That's section B. It's stating those that might not be allowed to have that freedom of expression that every other person enjoys. Basically, members of the army, members of the police force do not enjoy this overriding rights because of laws that might be, like, for example, the martial law or the military law does not allow soldiers to have their expression because of the chain of command. So also with the police and any other forces. But apart from that, every other person, every other citizen has a right to expression. However, some judgments have said that when the national security is involved, then the freedom of expression is curtailed. These are the decisions in some cases. I will find those cases and send it to us maybe by mail very much later. There are cases that says that national interest supersedes every right to freedom of expression. So section 40 says, let us go to section 40 says, every person shall be entitled to assembly freely. Answers. Everybody shall be entitled to assembly freely and associate with other persons, and in particular, he may form or belong to any political party, trade union, or any other association for the protection of his interest. This is the definition. This is what the Constitution has provided. Everyone, every person shall be entitled to assembly. So when we were protesting, it was because we had the right to assemble for the protection of our interests. It is a right that is enshrined in the Constitution. A right to protest, a right to assemble, a right to join political parties. That is what Section 40 is saying. I hope you understand it. So it was not as if these people just gathered together out of the blues. We gather because we have a right to protest. We have a right to protect our interests. Once we see that our interest is being violated, we have a right to come together as a community of youth that are affected solely by this of the Nigerian police force, this subunit of SARS or special anti-robbery squad, special anti-cultism squad, special anti-kidnapping squad that continue to harass, intimidate, kidnap, extort, and kill youth. This is the section that backs it up. Now, 41 says every citizen of Nigeria is entitled to move freely throughout Nigeria and to reside in any part thereof. And no citizen of Nigeria shall be expelled from Nigeria or refused entry thereby or exit therefrom. As in Nigeria, you have freedom of movement. You can stay in any state. As an Igbo man, you can stay in any Yoruba man state. As a Yoruba man, you can stay in the north. You can have houses in the north. You can be that. I'm going to go that. I'm going to go to that site. Everybody is entitled to reside anywhere. No one should tell you that you cannot move from this place to this place. Now there are exceptions, and that's what subsection 2 is saying. It said, nothing in subsection 1 of this section shall invalidate any law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society, imposing restrictions on the residence or movement of any person who has committed or, let us go up. Can we go up a bit? Yes. Who has committed or is reasonably suspected to have committed a criminal offense in order to prevent him from leaving Nigeria. Or B, providing for the removal of any person from Nigeria to any other country to A, one, to be tried outside Nigeria. So let me explain this. It says, even though you have freedom of movement everywhere, this freedom of movement is limited. One, if you have committed any crime whatsoever, any crime, and you are not allowed to leave the country. For example, if there's a petition against you, either at the EFCC or something, that was a commission of a crime, and you are trying to run out of Nigeria, and they stop you. This is the section that covers it. Now, it says, or if they want to extradite you, or they call an extradition, maybe an offense was committed in USA, and USA wrote to the Nigerian embassy asking them to extradite you, to bring you to the US to answer for commission of the crime. For example, all of us are very sure we are familiar with the Hush Puppy story. It was arrested in Dubai, but it was taken to the United States of America for his trial. That is what they call extradition, when they take you away from the place to another place to stand trial. So this section says that you can be extradited from Nigeria if you've committed a crime in another country. Now it says B, that's 3, undergo imprisonment outside Nigeria in execution of a sentence of a court of law in respect of a criminal offense of which he has been found guilty, provided that there is this one is there's what they call a reciprocal agreement. There must be an agreement of reciprocity. That means and what this one means that if US wants to extradite someone in Nigeria, Nigeria must be able to extradite someone from the US. That means there's an agreement of, that means both parties will reciprocate. That's what they call reciprocal agreement. And this is a diplomatic tie with countries. So, and also another exception is when the laws that allow government to impose curfews and the rest in case of emergencies, like we had in the last in Lagos State, where the governor imposed curfew for 3 days to quell supposed hoodlums that were running rampage in the state. Now, 41 says a citizen of Nigeria of a particular community, 42, sorry, ethnic group, place of origin, sex, religion, or, can we go up? I think this is against discrimination, or political opinion shall not by any reason, shall not by reason only that he is such a person be subjected either expressly, either expressly, either expressly by or in the political application of any law in force in Nigeria or any executive or administrative action of the government to disabilities or restrictions to which citizens of Nigeria or of other communities, ethnic groups, place of origin, sex, religion, or political opinion are not made subject or be accorded either expressly by or in the practical application of any law in force in Nigeria or any such executive or administrative action, any privilege or advantage that is not, can we scroll down a bit? That is not accorded to citizens of Nigeria of other communities, ethnic groups, place of origin, sex, religion, or political opinions. All this section is saying is that no one should be discriminated against. No one should be discriminated against. And that's what Section 2 is saying. It says, no citizen of Nigeria shall be subjected to any disability or deprivation merely by reason of the circumstances of his birth. That means no one should be discriminated or discriminated uh, against by reason of his birth or anything. That means, like, for example, when you have the word, this one is a bastard, or that there's no legitimacy of a child, that it was not born it was born out of wedlock. It does not apply in Nigeria. The constitution says no one should be discriminated against. Everyone is a legitimate child. Everyone is a legitimate person. Or this issue of the caste system that we have. And one side is Osu, another side is not Osu, or someone that is living with disabilities, either albinism or HIV, or by virtue of physical disabilities like blindness and the rest. All the constitution says that no one should be discriminated against. So once there's any form of discrimination, a person can go to court and vow for their rights. So almost 43. Subject to provisions of the Constitution, every citizen of Nigeria shall have the right to, can we say that? Acquire, yes, that was what I was going to. Subject to the provisions of this Constitution, every citizen of Nigeria shall have the right to acquire and own immovable properties anywhere in Nigeria. Anywhere in Nigeria. That means, as a Yoruba man, I can go to Onitsha and buy property. As an Igbo man, I can go to Kaduna and buy property. As an Hausa man, I can go to Jabode and buy properties. I can own properties. No one should stop me from owning immovable properties because of my place of my state of origin. This is a rule. This is what the rule says. This is what the law says. So no one should stop anyone from owning property anywhere. As an Igbo man should not buy land in Ikorodu, or this man is an Hausa man. Why is he buying land in Abia in Ebonyi? No, the Constitution says everyone is entitled to own immovable properties anywhere in this country, anywhere in Nigeria. That's section 43 of the Constitution. Now, 44 of the Constitution now says no movable property or any interest in immovable property shall be taken possession of compulsorily, and no right over or interest in any such property shall be acquired compulsorily in any part of Nigeria except in the manner and for the purposes prescribed by a law that, among other things, requires the prompt payment of compensation thereof. Now, in this country, there are some times that the government will want to acquire a property. For example, maybe you own a piece of land or a parcel of land in Ikorodu, and government wants to build a school. Now, there's a laid down procedure that the government must follow to acquire that your property. They must pay compensation. They must pay prompt compensation. And it must be acquired for the interest of the public, for public purpose. So government cannot acquire a property and give it to another person for the sake of party government. No. The government must acquire strictly for public purposes. strictly for public interest. Once it is not for public interest, any acquisition is void. Once there's no payment of prompt payment of compensation, any acquisition is what is void. So if government wants to build a road, wants to build hospital, wants to build schools, whatever they want to build that is of public interest, and they need to acquire a property, there must be prompt payment of compensation to the person, and it must be for the acquisition, for the purpose of public overriding public interest. I hope you understand so far. Let's go to 45. Let's go to 45, and we're about to round up. Section 45 of the Constitution. Can we scroll up a bit? Yeah. Scroll up. Yes. Now, 45 says nothing in section 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41 of this constitution shall invalidate any law that is reasonable, justifiable. Yeah, I've been told that my time has come to a close. I think what we will do is that let us ask questions. The remaining just two sections of the Constitution, 45 and 46, that is remaining under this fundamental right, and it's just all these are just summary of everything that we've said. So it is time for question and answer. Please let us ask our questions. Let me see
All
what
right.
has been.
Hi,
Yeah.
Samson. Yeah, thank you for the session. So what we've done is we've compiled all the questions that people have asked, both on Zoom and on YouTube. So I'll just ask the questions and then you'd respond. So the
Okay.
first question says, based on what you said earlier, can the police search your phone based on reasonable suspicion without a warrant? So I think a follow-up question to that is, what is the definition of reasonable suspicion?
Yes. Thank you very much. Now, Section 4 of the Police Act actually defines what reasonable suspicion is. And now, what do you define as reasonable suspicion? The police must see that there is a commission of a crime, that there must be that the fact that your phone is being used to commit a crime. Now, how do they do this? And that's why you say when they arrest you, say you're a Yahoo boy, you're this one. Because in their they see you using an iPhone and they feel that in their mind that you're already they've classified you as an internet fraudster, and this is them trying to put in the 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 reasonable suspiciousness from their own from their own side. But the law says that they must think that you're using that phone to commit a crime. It's a vague statement, actually. And to be very honest, it's a vague statement. It's a vague provision of the law, but it is what it is. And there's really nothing that can be done until there's a new law that repeals the old one. So they can search your phone if they feel that the phone you're using has been used to commit a crime. And that's why they're
Okay.
very quick to tag you an internet fraudster, because they're already deeming it that you are, or you have used the phone to, should I use the word, to defraud people.
Okay. Does that mean, and can they do that even in the absence of your lawyer, or must you have do you have the right to get your lawyer
You have a right to
there?
insist that you have a right to insist that you want your lawyer to be present.
Okay. All right.
You have
So,
you have a right to insist that your lawyer should be present. It is your right.
okay. So, the next question is, what is the legal process to cut senators and House of Reps salaries as citizens?
To cut out of their salaries. It is the problem with that is that it is the House of Rep and the senators, that's the National Assembly, that must make that law to reduce the salaries. It is there that it is only the National Assembly that can make such a law or make such a provision to cut their own salaries. But what the citizens can do is to recall their senators. Now that's a whole different process entirely. what it's called, that once the constitution provides that once the constituents have no confidence in their representative, they can initiate what they call a recall process to recall that member of the house of the Senate or the House of Rep back. But for there to be a cut or a slice of that their jumbo salary, it is them. That is why we need to vote people that are conscionable of or have the conscience of the people at heart to reduce that salary.
Okay, I think what you would do for us is give us the process of recalling it. So we won't do that now because we have limited time. The process of
Yes,
recalling a senator. So
of
we
the
will put
senator,
it
yes.
up, yeah, on a banner and post on our social media pages so that people can have access to it and would know how to recall
That would be
our
very fine.
senator. Okay, so we also say I have a question that says, so if the law says no one has the right to search your phone, what do you say about the newly signed law by the president? I think that this has
The-
been
yeah,
addressed.
it has always been there. Well, the law says you have right to privacy. That's what the law says. But the act says that if there's an issue of reasonable suspicion, the police can search without warrant. This has always been in all the acts. It's not even the new one that was signed. The former act had the same provision, and that's section 4 of the provision is a blanket order, a blanket power that was given to them to search once they pursue that the issue of reasonable suspicion is the problem right now because what is reasonable? What is when you use the word reasonable suspicion, it must be what is obtainable to an average mind. But we know that the Nigerian police is not the average mind that we have.
Okay, so another question says, is it right constitutionally to record the police either when they are harassing you or harassing someone else? Like, do you have the right to record the police?
You have the right to record the police. It is because they are afraid of the implication of the power that you have. That is why they always react violently. You have a right to record the police. There is no there is no law. I don't know if there's a new one coming in the future that prohibits you from recording the police. You have a right. It is
Okay.
enshrined in the Constitution.
All right. So someone says in the Constitution, can the president be arrested or resign and how?
Now, for the purpose, the Constitution says that the president and the governor have what they call president, vice president, the governor and deputy governor have what they call immunity. There's an immunity clause a clause in the Constitution that protects them during the span of their tenure from any criminal or civil litigation. Now, the only way the president can be arrested is if he has been impeached by the National Assembly. There must first be an impeachment process whereby they will impeach him. After he has been impeached, then he can be arrested for any of the gross misconduct that he has done. Now, can the president resign? Yes, he's allowed to resign. He can resign at will if he wants to resign. In short, even the law says that if the president is not of sound mind, if he's infirm, that means he's very ill, that cannot perform his duties as a president, he should resign, actually. And the vice president
Okay.
should take over, or if any of them, the Senate president will take over.
Okay. So a question says, how does Nigeria being a centralized government constitute to Nigerians' problem? The fact
Yeah,
that okay, yeah.
yeah. For example, now, the last example or the most recent example that we can use is the fact that when the governor of Lagos was talking, said he had no idea who sent the police or the military to the Lekki toll gate, and the reason is that he does not have any power whatsoever over the either the military or the police in the state. Everything comes from Abuja. So the change of commissioner of police, change of this, change of DPOs must all come from Abuja. So there's just one that goes round. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
There's also
Okay.
one central channel, and the reason why is that if there was now, for example, now when the looting and burning was going on, if you had state police, I'm very sure they will have been effective in stopping the looting and burning and stopping the but because they have to wait for orders from above, orders from Abuja, orders from what's name, there's this delay in effectiveness. And this goes around in every other thing. The centralized system of government creates a delay in effective governance or the for or especially the grassroots from feeling the effect of government.
Okay, so let's move quickly. It says there's a question that says, how do I connect the Police Act with the Constitution? How do
How
I
do we
connect the Police Act with the Constitution, especially the sections on human rights?
now the constitution is the ground norm. When you use the word ground norm, it means that it is the mother of all laws. It is the basis of all laws. Every other law rests or finds its legitimacy upon the constitution. Now, every law that is not consistent with the constitution is invalid. If you read the some of the sections that we read, you see that some the constitution will say nothing in this section shall invalidate one particular law. I don't know if you remember that clearly. That nothing in this section or nothing in subsection one shall invalidate any law made by. So sometimes the constitution itself would give room for a little bit of shall I use the word discrepancies
Okay.
from itself. So, but the Police Act and the Constitution, the Police Act is subject to the Constitution. If there's anything whatsoever that invalidates or goes against the provision of the Constitution, the Police Act is the Constitution supersedes the Police Act. I don't know if that answers the question according to what the person wants to hear.
I think so. So someone says, so I know you mentioned that you have the right to request for your lawyer when the police wants to search your phone. But can the police search your phone in the absence of your lawyer? Like even if you request, but do they have the right to search even without even with the absence of your lawyer, in the absence of your lawyer?
Now, the question is, do they have the right? The word right now is, I don't want to use the word right. I'll use the word power. Do they have the power to search your phone without your lawyer present? Yes, they can do that. And this is because of the this provision of the sections of the Police Act that empowers them to do that. But what I'm saying is that once you tell them that you have a right to also insist, now this is a dicey situation. You have a right to insist that you want your lawyer to be present. You're not now. This is now. You're not saying them. You're not telling them you don't want them to search your phone. You're saying, yeah, you can search my phone. Yes, I'm not denying you that right, but I'm saying that you can only search my phone in the presence of my lawyer. Now, you have not violated their powers to search, but you have also insisted on your right to fair hearing and to representation by legal rep.
Okay, so we are running out of time because of the next session. So but we'll answer
So
our questions as much as we can. So there's a question that says, how do you get a lawyer? Can the police make you follow them to the station without a warrant?
yes, the police can make you can make you follow them to their station without a warrant. That is what the whole section, the reasonable suspicion can. But they cannot force you to write a statement without your lawyer present. So it
Okay.
is it is it is important that you tell them that I know my right and I insist I want to call my lawyer. And
Okay.
this is where the
So
whole they will harass you, they will shout, but you can insist that I want to call my lawyer. I want my lawyer to be present. It is your right. It is your fundamental right.
okay, is it part of the law? Is there any part of the law that states that the police must read your rights before arresting you?
Now, if we go back to the constitution that we had working on, there's a part that says, I think it's section 34, not 34, 36, that of the two, that says that they must tell you the offense that you have committed. And that is the height, that's like, oh, that's the blanket rule. There's no, the law encourages that the police tell you of your rights, they read you your rights, but it does not mandate them to do that.
Okay.
But the offense that was committed, they must tell you the reason why they're arresting you. It is compulsory.
Okay. Is there any allowance for the concept of citizens' arrest? Also, is there a right to remain silent, just like the Miranda rights, Fifth
Yes,
Amendment
you
of
have a
US?
right to remain silent. It's a right that is, you have a right to remain silent. You have a right not to, because now when it comes to criminal matters, it is the theory or the onus of proof. The burden of proof is on the prosecution to prove their case beyond reasonable doubt. Now, if you have a right to keep quiet and not say anything, it is for
Okay.
them to prove their case. Now, what was the other question? There was one before you asked that,
For the
Miranda, right?
concept of citizens' arrest.
Yes, a citizen can arrest, but must immediately hand over to the police.
Okay. Thank you.
Must immediately hand over to the police. Once a citizen arrest, immediately you must hand over. That's why you see when this Lagos State Neighborhood Watch, when they arrest, they immediately take to the police station. That is because they are not recognized by the law per se, so they have to immediately take over and give to the police. So the police takes over.
All right. So the next question says, what's the process of impeachment? So this question, I know it's a long process.
Sorry, you seem to have skipped my question. Sorry. I had asked how are laws that conflict the provisions of the Constitution contested or revoked?
Okay, I think I'd
Okay,
still
thank you very
first.
much. You once there's a law that supposedly conflicts or there's a conflict with the constitution, it is for a matter to be filed in the court for the judge to interpret the constitution as well as the law that is in conflict. Now the judge is to make a declaration that this law is in conflict with the constitution, thereby making it invalid. But if these laws are not tested in the courtrooms, then there's nothing that can be done. So they must test them in the courtroom. They must take it to court. Like this law is in violation of the Constitution. The court must make a pronouncement, and once the court makes a pronouncement, automatically the law becomes invalid and void ab initio, or it is repealed by the National Assembly when they're making their laws.
All right, I guess that answers the question. So I was saying the process of impeachment, this you would give to us, we'll put in a banner and post because I know it's like a step-by-step process.
Yes.
So after this class, we'll get this, put it up and share as far wide as possible. Then there's also a question that says, what will it take to revise the 1999 constitution? It is possible, right? Let me first ask if that is possible. And if it is possible, we'll get the steps and also post that, right? Okay.
Yes.
So someone
Very,
says
very possible to, but it is
revise the
all acts
constitution.
of National Assembly. The National Assembly must make the steps to do that, to
Well,
either
there's
amend.
nothing the citizens can do to ensure that this is revised.
The citizens can actually make rights through their reps, either in the House of Rep or in the Senate, for there to be a constitutional review.
Okay. All right.
These
So
are the
we'll
things
get
that
the
the
steps.
yes.
Yeah, we'll get the steps. Is there a provision in the law that allows decentralization?
Which are in the law that allows decentralization. For now, no. And that's why if you listen to many of them when they were doing their campaign, they were ushering for, and they were saying that they want a restructuring because the constitution centralizes all those things. And until when there's a change of constitution that decentralizes it, for now it is still centralized and there's nothing that can be done until there's a constitutional review or amendment.
Who has the superior power, the Senate or the president?
Well, we operate a system of check and balances. So the president is the president, but he's also in some ways subject to the National Assembly. So it's for because they check and balance themselves. The executive checks the legislators, the legislature checks the executive, the judiciary checks both of them, and they all check the judiciary. So it's a system of check and balances. So they have to. There's no. It's three organs working together. So it's not a superiority battle. They're supposed to operate independently, but in sync to give better governance.
Okay. They said where traders are displaced and no alternative space was created for them, like marketplace, because the government wants to renovate the markets, do they have rights to any form of compensation? Like what compensation should those traders enjoy?
Now, if the government is renovating the place, it is still for the market. If it is renovation, it is still for the market. So I'm not sure they want to compensate them because they are still going to go back to the place. That is that if I understand the word. But if they are totally displaced, now the problem is, was that place a designated marketplace in the first place? That's one question. If it was a designated marketplace, then they are entitled to compensation. But if it was not, if it is an illegal market structure, then the government will not compensate because in the first place, it's not supposed to be a market. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. So, in a place, they said, okay, let me just read this. Good day. I've heard in the East, they keep the land for people of the states of origin or from that village, and there is a committee that gives it to them when they require after some process. Is this legal under Section 43?
It is not legal. You cannot keep any place for anybody. Everybody is entitled to own land. So that is an illegal act that can be challenged in court. But we also have to be wise because we operate as much as we want to operate under the law. We have to understand that we operate in a country where there's so many diabolic things. So let us be very careful before fighting all these things. But it is under the law. Under the law, it is not legal. You can challenge it in court, but be wise about it.
Okay, so someone asked if Nigeria can adopt a one-child legislation to curb overpopulation like China did.
Oh, it's possible to adopt it. It is very possible. Like any legislation can be raised on the House of the National Assembly, and once the National Assembly goes through the process of bill making and pass the law, it can the government the president assents it. It becomes law. We can do that. But the question is that is that is that going to be followed strictly? Being an African country with strong traditional beliefs in multiple children, not knowing we always say that we don't know whether which one will survive and which one will become governor for us. So that's the mentality that most people have, and that's why they have so many children that they cannot cater for. But definitely under the law, we can actually make a legislation of a one child per family. It's
All
very
right.
possible.
So we have just about 2 minutes to go. Final question. How do we explain the fact that police officers don't tell the offenses that you commit and they also torture to force
Because they
confessions?
are they are very they are, many of them are illiterate. Many of them do not know they don't even know the law that they operate or they're supposed to be executing. They don't know the law. They don't know the provision of the law. I'm not sure. I've never been to any of their training, so I don't know what kind of trainings they give to them. I do not know, but for my experience as a litigation lawyer, going to police stations for over 10 years, I have been, it is very few of them that actually are knowledgeable about these laws. It is very sad that many of them do not know. So, and they feel that the only way they can elicit information is that by torture, and they don't even tell you because most of the times the crimes are not, you do not even commit a crime. They just is that they're trying to punish you or they are acting on the behest of somebody else. But if they really are doing their work, some of them, when they really do their work, they do it according to the prayers of the law. They tell you why you've been what you the offense that you're arrested for, and they allow you to have your legal representation. But many of them do not know the laws. They do not know the laws that they operate under. It's a martial to them. It's just a martial law. I have a uniform. I have a gun. Answer me, open me, or they slap you, they beat you. That's what they do.
All right, thank you, Samson. I said the last question, but I'll just ask this final one because I know it's what every youth wants to know now. So, what are the criteria for establishing a political party? And are there quotas for every party with respect to number of offices they can hold? I think this is very important for us all now. How do we establish a political party, and are there quotas for party with respect to the number of offices they can hold?
Now, section I think it's 45, 43 allows anybody to form a political party. Now, for the purpose of forming political parties, criteria are contained in the INEC Act, as in Independent National Electoral Commission. They have the criteria. I will have to get that out for the formation of a political party, and as well as what it contains. So basically, maybe I would get that by before the net or after the next class. Maybe we can just put on the banner and send it around
Oh, that
for
would be nice.
yes,
Yeah.
I will get that across the formation of a political party. But yes, I know that we the youth are agitating for our own political party. No longer the PDP and APC switch or camouflage party that they do. A truly youthful party that has the desire of the nations at heart. And definitely, I will bring out the criteria and send it out to you once I can get it on the INEC Act. Criteria for us to form our political parties, the structures that must be, the rules and regulation that guides the conventions and all, and these are the how to select your state officials and the rest. These are the things I would send across to us very soon.
Okay. All right. The questions are really pouring in, but we need to go for the next session now. Someone is asking, and this is really the final one. Can you sue the police when they beat or torture you unlawfully?
Oh, definitely. I did that. If for those that on my Twitter handle, that's what is pinned there. I tried to sue the police for harassment, and I've done that for so many other people that once they've beaten them or illegally arrested them or put them in detention for over 24 hours, 6 days, 4 days, 5 days. There's a process of asking for your fundamental rights and enforcement processes against them. So you can sue them. You definitely can sue them. You should sue them. Because most times people just, oh, okay, let it go. And they allow this impunity to continue. But you can definitely sue them.
Okay, so what we'll do is the rest of the questions, let's take it to Twitter. So visit the Detalion page on Twitter, comment on any of the session posts, and then Samson will be there to respond to as many as possible. So let's take this conversation from here. Let's continue on Twitter. Thank you very much, Samson. It's really been an exciting one. If you see the comment section, like it's buzzing, like it is time for a change, definitely. So thank you to everybody. We'll be moving quickly to the next session now, which would answer some of the questions we have asked about budgetary allocation and all of that. So moving quickly to our next session, we'll be having Omobola Adu speaking on the Nigerian economy. This one is also very important because we need money to do everything. So Omobola is an economic analyst with focus on macroeconomic modeling. His main research interests include monetary and development economics and policy impact evaluation using DSGE and QPM models. Omobola currently works as a research analyst with growth and development asset management. He has published several scholarly research in peer-reviewed journals and serves as a reviewer for a number of international journals. Omobola is currently a PhD student of economics at Covenant University, and Omobola will be taking us on the state of the Nigerian economy in 1 minute. So let's welcome Omobola. Omobola, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we
okay,
can.
So just as we said, I'll be taking us through. So what I'll be taking us through today is understanding Nigeria's macroeconomic environment, some of the challenges we are facing as a country, and what we should be looking at. So just hold on a minute so I can share my slides. Okay. Please, can we see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes, I can see.
Okay. This is just a brief outline of what we'll look at. It's a lot, but I'll try to run it through quickly and make it easy to understand for everybody. So the purpose of this short session is to help us to have a better understanding of the Nigerian economy and to understand some of the reasons why we are experiencing some of the challenges we are facing, and how key economic data that seem abstract to some people, how it really affects us. So that's what we'll be going through today. So this is just an overview of Nigeria's economy. In terms of GDP, Nigeria is worth about 34 trillion naira. That's over about $400 million. Population-wise, the country is estimated to have over 200 million people. In terms of GDP, in the last quarter, in Q2 2020, the Nigerian economy grew by about negative 6.1%. We have other indicators like inflation rate that is as high as 13.72%, and some other indicators that would also go through during the course of this session. Now, how do we measure economic performance in Nigeria? So the major method which countries around the world, or the most acceptable way in which we measure economic performance, is through the gross domestic product.
And
So, GDP is a measure of economic performance of any country. So anytime you hear GDP, what do they mean? So it's just the market value of all goods and services that have been produced in the country. There are usually three ways in which people can measure GDP: the expenditure approach, production, and income approach. So this first chart gives us an indication of the economic performance of our country from 2015 to date. So if we notice, the Nigerian economy has been struggling since 2015. We're seeing growth of 2.7%, negative -1% in 2016. In 2017, we grew marginally. And we know that because of the pandemic that we are facing right now, growth has come down to -6%. And IMF forecasts that by the end of this year, we'll get to contract by about 5%. Now, so what do those statistics actually mean? When we talk about how do we measure GDP, like I said, we can measure it in three approaches: expenditure, production, and income. So whenever you hear the expenditure approach of GDP, they are basically telling you that GDP is a sum total of what we consume in the country, the level of investment, what government is spending, our exports and imports. And in Nigeria, consumption accounts for the largest proportion of our GDP. So this second chart basically shows you the blue icon. You can see consumption accounts for close to 70% of GDP. So that's why it's important for the government to actually put in policies that will ensure that people are consuming. So how do you improve people's income? How do you improve people's income levels? Are you protecting incomes? Are you creating job opportunities? Those are the things that lead to improvement in economic performance. Now, another way in which we classify the Nigerian economy is to look at it on a sector basis. Now, this first chart, in terms of services, agriculture, and industries, shows you how we measure economic performance in terms of production. So we classify the economy in three broad categories: services, agriculture, and industries. Nigeria presently, services accounts for over 50% of our GDP, whereas agriculture is about 25% and industries about 22%. But the most interesting classification of the Nigerian economy is based on oil and the non-oil sector. Now, the non-oil sector accounts for over 90% of GDP, whereas the oil sector accounts for just 9%. But in terms of growth rates and how they influence the economy, the oil sector drives most of the growth in Nigeria's economy, despite it being accounting for just 8% of GDP. So if you can see from the second chart, the green bar shows us the performance of the oil sector. We can see that most of the larger portion of the growth has been from the oil sector, whereas the non-oil sector that accounts for over 90% of our GDP in terms of growth rate isn't doing so well. So that just shows you the issues with the Nigerian economy, that in terms of how diversified we are fairly diversified. We have services, we have agriculture, but in terms of what they actually contribute to GDP, in terms of the growth rate, we're seeing that the oil sector, despite its small portion, accounts for much of the growth. And that's why the government starts to panic when oil prices starts to fall or oil prices crash, because it means that once oil prices crash, there is a very high chance, maybe 90% chance, that the economy is going to run into trouble, and you start hearing things about economic recessions. So that's all we'll talk about in terms of the structure of the economy. So in terms of structure of the economy, we understand that GDP is a measure through which we measure economic performance. And we can look at it in terms of production and expenditure. From the expenditure angle, we understand that consumption is the major driver or the largest proportion of GDP in Nigeria. Then when we look at it on a sector by sector basis, we're able to show that all sector, despite its low account of GDP, it's still the major signal for where growth is going to be in the country for the foreseeable future, until we can expand or develop those non-oil sectors. Now, consumer prices and inflation. Now, in Nigeria, inflation, when we hear inflation, the way inflation is measured is by something called the consumer price index. So inflation is measured through the changes in the consumer price index, either on a monthly or on an annual basis. So in Nigeria, we've been, I think for the past 13 months, inflation has been on the increase. So let that sink in. For the past 13 months, so that's more than a year, the prices of goods and services in Nigeria has been on the increase, and largely because of food prices. You can see the chart. Currently, Nigeria's inflation is around 13.71%, and food inflation is around 17%. Now, some people usually ask, oh, this inflation figures, how does it affect me? How does an inflation figure of 13.71, how does it affect me? Like, my income has probably increased, they've increased my salary. I'm a big boy, but inflation, the way inflation affects us is through what we can actually purchase with our income. So there's something called, in economics, there's something called money illusion. So money illusion just tends to show that we shouldn't look at our income or what we receive as salary on the surface level, but rather look at it in terms of what we can actually consume, what we can actually do with our income. So here I say that inflation affects us by reducing the value of our money, that is the purchasing power. So this is just a question, if we can answer it. So I said, joined a company in September 2019, and we're paying him 90,000 naira per month. In September 2020, that's in a year, John was confirmed as a full staff, and he received a salary increase of 11%. So his salary moved from 90,000 to 100,000. Do you think John is better off today? So that's just a question. We can put our answers in the comments section, and by the end of the session, I'll go back and answer this question. Now, another key economic method that characterizes the Nigerian economy is unemployment. So everybody or most people I know we're all very jittery in terms of unemployment. We know that when we go outside, we see a lot of people on the road hawking. We know a lot of people, even some of our friends, that haven't been able to get jobs. So unemployment in Nigeria it's a very critical thing, and how it's usually measured. So when you hear the unemployment rate is at 27%. So currently, unemployment rate in Nigeria is around 27%. Underemployment rate is around 28%. And total unemployment in the country is as high as 56%. What do these statistics mean? So the unemployment rate just tells us the proportion of people in the labor force who are actively, the keyword is the people who are actively looking for work, but are unable to find any work for at least 20 hours in a week. Now, the underemployment rate, there is also something called underemployment. Underemployment rate is just, in summary, what underemployment looks at is people who are in part-time employment, people who aren't working full-hour jobs. That's what we call the people who are considered to be underemployed. Now, sometimes there's a misconception when we say, oh, the unemployment rate has increased from 10% to 20%, and people automatically think that people have lost jobs, but that isn't so. So whenever the unemployment rate increases, it can mean either two things. One, the labor force in the country has dropped, or people have actually lost jobs. So whenever we hear the unemployment rate has increased in the country, we shouldn't be quick to say, oh, people have lost jobs. We should actually look at the statistics and look at the breakdown. For example, in Q2 2020, the unemployment rose to 27% compared to 23% in 2018. Now, when we looked at it, or when you look at the breakdown, you'll find out that labor force actually dropped. So a major reason why the unemployment rate has increased today in Nigeria, surprisingly, is because people are not ready to work. And you can look at it in terms of the economic conditions. Getting a job today, how much are they going to pay you? You might look at it in that way. You can look at it in terms of that people aren't ready to work in these current economic conditions, or people are looking for other opportunities. Are they probably thinking, let me leave this country to find greener pastures? So these are the kind of things that you should think about when you hear the unemployment rate. But the bottom line is that unemployment rate is actually too high in the country. And there are also some people who believe that the rates that the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics is actually publishing doesn't reflect the true picture. By the time you look at northern states where we have a larger people that are the larger percent of people who are walking the streets looking for employment opportunities. I'll move on. Another major statistics that defines the Nigerian economy is in terms of the exchange rates. So people are usually, exchange rate it's actually a very touchy subject or touchy topic. We hear people tell us that, oh, in the 1980s, that the naira to the dollar was maybe 1 naira, that you could exchange dollar for maybe 10 naira or even less than a naira. So that time you hear that the exchange rate was actually very good. Simply there's over time, there's largely been a misconception by a lot of people that Nigeria is a net importer of goods. So what do we mean by net importer of goods? That is typically our imports exceed our exports. And that is why our currency has been devaluating or depreciating over the years. But that isn't really the case for Nigeria. Why we've seen our currency fall over the last decades or over 2 decades, 3 decades, usually has to do with the demand and supply of foreign exchange and how international trade is conducted. Now, I'll give an explanation. Whenever we whenever we want to conduct trade, when we want to export our goods and services, our exports is largely oil. So whenever we export oil to other countries, because the price of oil is quoted in dollars, whenever our revenue from export is coming back is in dollars. Now the reverse is the case for imports. Whenever we have to import goods, we can't import goods in naira. We import goods in dollars. So this situation tends to create an imbalance in the sense that our export of goods does not lead to demand for naira, whereas our import for goods leads to a demand for dollars. So when that happens, we have a situation where there is too much demand for dollars over naira. So when that happens, there will be an increased pressure on our exchange rate. And that's why our exchange rate is usually falling. Because the exchange rate is simply how much value people are going to place on our currency. So if people are not demanding for naira, then our currency will tend to weaken. So that is the whole concept about the exchange rate. So whenever you hear that our currency is depreciating, or you hear in the BDC market that the naira is exchanging for 500 to a dollar, it's because there's no demand, or there's no sufficient demand for our naira. That is why our currency typically weakens. Another concept or key indicator we typically hear is our external reserves. So Nigeria's external reserves, or whenever we hear external reserves or foreign reserves, in simple terms, what it means is the Central Bank of Nigeria's holdings of foreign assets in foreign banks. So largely, when we hear foreign reserves, it basically means Nigeria's, or the Central Bank of Nigeria's, accounts with companies like JP Morgan abroad, with companies like Citibank abroad, companies like basically multinationals that are abroad. So our foreign assets, our currency holdings that are in banks abroad, make up our external reserves. And the movement in our external reserves is largely dependent on oil prices. Remember what I said earlier, that a large proportion of Nigeria's exports is oil driven. So in particular, 90%, over 90% or 80% of our exports in Nigeria today is oil. So whenever you have a situation like that, and remember we said our external reserves make up foreign assets in foreign countries. So whenever Nigeria exports crude oil, the dollars we receive from it go into our JP Morgan accounts abroad, and it sits there. Now, because largely everything is crude oil, whenever oil prices suddenly changes, you find that our external reserves tends to move in the same direction. So as you can see from this graph, whenever in 2015 and 2016, when oil prices came down significantly, our external reserves fell. When oil prices improved in 2017, 2018, our external reserves also increased. So today, whenever so that's why our country is so sensitive to changes in oil prices, because things like external reserves that the CBN needs to defend the currency is all driven. I hope I'm making sense. I'll be able to take questions later. Okay. So we're gradually coming to a close. Then another thing in Nigeria is our foreign investment. So I'm sure everybody typically hears things like Nigeria's foreign direct investment or Nigeria's foreign portfolio investment, and how the government or CBN is usually saying, oh, we need to attract foreign investment into the country. So foreign investment inflows in Nigeria is usually divided into three major things. into three major things. The first part is the foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, and other investment. So as at 2020 quarter 1, total inflows into the country was about 5.8 billion. If you compare that to 2019 quarter 1 of 8.5 billion, we can see there's a stark or there's a major fall into investment coming into Nigeria. Why is that? We can think of it in terms of how ease of business is being conducted in Nigeria. So people or foreign investors would be willing to put money or willing to pour investment into the country when they know that, our companies are not going to be looted. There is no security or political crisis. So this NSAS crisis, we've heard situations where companies like ShopRite, other stores are being looted, are being vandalized. So things like that are some of the reasons why foreign direct investments will not come into the country. So foreign direct investment into the country presently is around 200 million. That is so embarrassing for a country of over 200 in population or over 400 million dollars in GDP. It's an embarrassing figure that we can only attract 200 million in foreign direct investments. And it has a lot to do with our economy and has a lot to do with political crisis. As a foreign investor, you want to be sure that when you set up a plant or a company in Nigeria, you're sure that nothing is going to happen to that company. You want to be sure that there's not going to be any political crisis that would lead to your investment becoming bad. You want to be sure that when your company comes into the country, your assets are not going to be destroyed. So those are the kind of things that has made foreign direct investment into Nigeria to be virtually non-existent. So foreign direct investments, 200 million, compared to portfolio investment of over 4 billion. Now, basically, we call foreign portfolio investment hot money because foreign portfolio investment just means a foreign investor investing in things like treasury bills, investing in things like open, basically treasury bills. So those things are not sustainable. Treasury bills typically mature after 1 year. So when this money comes in, at the end of the year, there's a very high chance that at the end of the year, the money is going out. Unlike foreign direct investment that stays over the years. That's why we have companies like Unilever, you have companies like Nestle that have been in this country for over 20 years. So that's the kind of investment we need if we want to grow and advance as a country. Portfolio investment doesn't lead to growth or doesn't lead to significant growth rather in the country. So that's another key challenge that we have in Nigeria today, that investment inflows that come into the country is not significant in terms of FDI. It's FDI that is going to create jobs for Nigeria. When Nestle comes into the country, they are going to set up a plant and they are going to employ Nigeria. Foreign portfolio investment doesn't lead to the creation of jobs. I'll quickly move on. So in terms of the government sector, and the government sector has to do a lot with how budgeting and how resource allocation is done. I think in the subsequent class, they will dwell more on this aspect, but I'll just give a brief overview. Now, the way budgeting is done, the government budgets revenue and it also has a plan for expenditure. I think the 2021 budget is about 13 trillion. And where you hear 13 trillion and revenue is around, I think, 7 trillion. And you just have to think, where is the government going to raise money to fund these budgets? You have a budget of 13 trillion in an environment where the pandemic is still. And in particular, in Nigeria, over the last 5 years, the government has not been able to meet up its revenue In fact, revenue in Nigeria has underperformed in the last 5 years by over 40%. So we're saying if the government budgets a revenue of 100 naira today, what they would achieve at best is 60 naira. The reverse is the case for expenditure. For expenditure, the government or Nigeria, we always find a way to meet our budget, to meet our spending. So we always usually meet up our spending. Our spending is usually close to 70-90%, whereas in terms of revenue, it's only 40%. And what that happens is that at the end of the day, the government is going to borrow more. So this first graph shows us an indication of the differences between government revenue and government expenditure. So in 2015, the difference between our revenue and expenditure, we had a deficit budget of over 1 trillion. 2019 is about 4 trillion. And from the 2021 budget, our deficit is close to 5 trillion. So when you hear that, what does it mean? The whole thing is that at the end of the day, government is going to borrow. So, and presently we have such a worrying debt profile. As at 2020, like I mentioned in the beginning, Nigeria's total borrowing is 30 trillion. That is too high for a country that we have challenges with revenue. 30 trillion debt is too high. If we look at it between 2015 to 2019, as at 2015, during Jonathan's regime, I think, our debt was only 10 trillion. So between 2015 and 2020, that's over 5 years, our debt profile has increased 3 times. We've taken it from just 10 trillion to 30 trillion within 5 years. And that borrowing has not led to a significant improvement in the lives of the people. So the government is borrowing so much, and we are not seeing where this money is going to. So that has to do a lot with accountability. It has to do a lot with the cost of governance. I think in the 2021 budget, the government budgeted close to 4 trillion as personnel expenses. So they are saying that the cost of salaries for the president, for people in the Senate, is over 4 trillion. Why? Why should we be spending so much on government expenditure? These are things that don't lead to growth. So we're spending so much on salaries, whereas if what the government budgeted for salaries is close to or is even more than what they are spending on things that will lead to growth in terms of investing in road, in terms of infrastructures. We're spending the same proportion that we're spending on salaries. The same amount we're spending on salaries that we're using to pay senators is the same amount that the government wants to use to build roads, to improve electricity, and all those things. It basically does not make sense. That basically we're operating a budget that is not responsible. That is a summary of the Nigerian government sector. We are not being responsible. In terms of monetary policy in Nigeria, monetary policy, the way monetary policy decisions are being handled is basically handled by something we call the Monetary Policy Committee. And whenever they hold these decisions, the decisions on how they influence the economy is based on 3 major things, or 3 major things in particular: the monetary policy rates, the cash reserve ratios, and the liquidity ratio. Yes. So the monetary policy rates, whenever we hear monetary policy rates, what should it tell us? So whenever we hear that, oh, the CBN has reduced its policy rates from 11 to 11.5% from 12.5%, what does it mean? It basically, monetary policy rates, it basically tries to influence other interest rates, particularly interest rates in the bank. So monetary policy rate is the rate in which the Central Bank of Nigeria would lend to commercial banks, would lend to the Zenith Bank, would lend to UBA, would lend to GTB. So whenever they reduce the interest rate on the money, or whenever they reduce the monetary policy rate, they are trying to signal to banks that, oh, you should cut your lending interest rates. But in Nigeria, that is not really the case. Why? Because it doesn't really make sense for you to tell GTB to go and reduce the interest rates they charge to companies when the macroeconomic environment is weak. We said that Nigeria is growing negatively at about 6%. As a bank, you won't be comfortable. You won't be so comfortable to lend to maybe Ademola and Sons at 11%. That's why you have interest rates that banks would lend to people close to 20%. So a big company would get around 11% or 15%. But somebody like maybe Ademola and Sons or a small business, they will charge that person around 20% or even close to 30%. Now, these other ratios on the cash reserves, liquidity ratios, they are basically what CBN uses to manage liquidity in the banking system. I think we must have all heard something about the loan to deposit ratio. So just check my slides. Okay. So the loan to deposit ratio is one of, so like I said about the monetary policy rate, that when CBN usually reduces this rate, it doesn't really change how commercial banks lend to the real sector, how it lends to companies in Nigeria. So the central bank, within the last 2 years, they started to come up with what you call unconventional policies in order to force banks to lend to companies. So the first thing is the loan to deposit ratio. The loan to deposit ratio, in simple terms, what it means is that whenever banks like UBA, GTB collect deposits, a certain proportion of it must be lent out to companies. So for example, I'll just give a simple illustration to make us understand. Now, the loan to deposit ratio in Nigeria is around 65%. So what that means that for every 100 naira that UBA collects as deposits, they must lend 65 naira out to the real sector. So that policy is the way they are using to try to force these banks to lend to companies. Now you have to think. You now have to think how do banks react in this? Like I said, the economic conditions are so bad that it doesn't make sense for commercial banks to be issuing or to increase their loan profile. So what they basically done to maneuver or to maneuver this loan to deposit ratio is that whenever they want to take in deposits, they've cut savings rates or they've cut deposit rates. Today, if you take 500 million, to the bank will probably give you 1% on 500 million. So it's that bad because they know that if they collect that 500 million, 55% of that 500 million, they must lend it out. So what we are saying today is that banks are basically saying that, oh, we're going to take these deposits, but we're not going to pay you so much, so that when the CBN penalizes us for going below to loan to deposit ratio, at the end of the day, we are fine. So that's how, so monetary policy decisions are very critical to the country, and they are also very critical to how commercial banks lend. Within the last month, I think, central bank released a new policy saying that savings deposits must be 10% of their policy rates. We'll just look at that in the next slide. So all what we've been looked at so far is to understand the Nigerian economy. So we've basically looked at how can we understand Nigeria's economy better. So that's what we've looked at in all these previous slides. So now, where is the country today? So I just gave So this slide just gives us a picture of where we are as a country today. So previously in Q1, in terms of GDP, we grew at about 1.8%. Currently, GDP growth rate is around minus 6.1%. And in Q3, we have a general expectation that the economy is still going to contract, but at least at a reduced rate. So in Q3, we are looking at the country or GDP contracting maybe around 3 to 4%. In terms of inflation, currently inflation is around 13.72%. And based on if we go out today and we try to buy things, most people that go to the market know that the prices of food have been on the increase, and the prices of goods and services are increasing. So currently today, there is no indication that the prices of goods and services are going to come down, largely because of things like, if we know that since last year, Nigeria's borders have been closed, and that has a way of impacting food prices. So today, inflation is going to mostly tend upwards. This PMI what PMI is the Purchasing Managers Index. It's also a way in which we gauge economic performance. I'll just skip that and move to Treasury bills. So presently today, as at the ending of September, 1 year Treasury bill is 3%. Let that sink in. So we're saying that for you to make any investment into the country, or if you want to buy Treasury bill today, in the primary market, the best you're going to get for a 1 year Treasury bill is around 3%. In the secondary market, it's much worse. Secondary market for Treasury bill is around 1%. So there's a reason why you're going to get 1%. Now, when commercial banks buy Treasury bill at 3%, they're not going to sell it to you at that 3%. They have to make some of profits. So in the secondary market, when they sell it to people like us, they'll sell it to us at 1%. And for the foreseeable future, it's going to remain like that because of CBN policies. So last year, CBN introduced a policy that basically depressed the interest rate environment we have today. So interest rates on deposits, on Treasury bills are so low that they discourage us to save. And if we remember, inflation is as high as 13%. So by the time you compare inflation rates to Treasury bill rates, it doesn't make sense to make or to invest in some form of financial instruments. In terms of exchange rates is currently around 380 officially, but in the parallel markets, exchange rate is close to 500, over 465 naira. Now, currently, savings deposits today, minimum is around 1.15%. And from the whole summary from where we are as a country today is to show that Nigeria's economy is very weak. So in summary, we have weak economic growth. We have a situation where inflation is on the increase. The exchange rate is very weak. Exchange rate around 400 to a dollar. In terms of fiscal sustainability, we've shown that we're operating a deficit budget with increasing debt that is not generating an improvement in economic conditions. We are also seeing a situation where people are earning negative returns on their investments and high unemployment. So this just tells us that the economy we are in today is in such a bad state. And that is why people are going on the streets to protest about beyond police brutality, about governance, about things are so hard that people are basically suffering. Jobs are not being created. Inflation, prices of goods in the country are rising. Food items are increasing on day-to-day or weekly basis. And the thing with inflation is that when the price of a food item increases today, tomorrow, there is a very low tendency that the price is going to come down. So this just shows the current state of the economy. And when you now look at the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, it makes everything worse. And at the end of the day, that's why people are protesting, because things are so bad. I'll just quickly wrap up and say, what should we be looking at? In order for us to progress, we need to strengthen the non-oil sector. In 2020 Q2, the ICT grew. When economic contracted by 6%, ICT improved by over 15% in Q2. We need to look at ways, how do we manage the budget in a more prudential manner? Let's reduce, that's why people are clamoring, let's reduce the cost of governance and transfer the money from the high cost of salaries for people in Senate. Let it go to economic driven sectors. And when we do that, the economy will generally improve. I think I've run out of time, and I think so that's where we'll end. And I'll just encourage questions, and basically thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Omobola. It's been a very insightful session. I'm sure many of us have at least basic knowledge of all these big economic things that we hear. So we'll just run through the questions and get responses to them. So so somebody asked, what counts as industry versus services? I know that in the beginning when you were differentiating the different, I think, sources of revenue and the way the economy could be divided, in the different ways the economy could be divided. Yeah, so you mentioned something about industries and services. Someone is asking what counts as industries, what counts as services.
So typically industries are basically, what comes under industries is basically the manufacturing sector. So the manufacturing sector is a major component of industries. Um, when you look at oil refinery in Nigeria, so those are the things that you look at industries, things that are basically into the production of goods. Now, services sector is plainly stated. Services are things, economic activities that you don't have tangible goods. So things like the ICT comes under services. Things like transportation. So transportation comes under services. So services are basically the intangible goods, whereas industries basically make up of the tangible goods that are being produced in the countries. So basically the manufacturing sector, oil refineries, um, so those are basically what are classified under industries. Maybe later I'll share the breakdown of what we classify under services in Nigeria and what we classify under industries.
All right, thank you. So a question says you mentioned that Nigeria is worth about $400 million. Please expatiate. Does that mean that Jay-Z, for example, who is worth over $1 billion, can buy Nigeria, or is worth more than Nigeria?
Oh, okay. So Jay-Z cannot really buy Nigeria. So when we say Nigeria is worth over $400 million, we're saying that in terms of the value of our production, in terms of the value of the goods we produce at the end of the year, that's what we mean by GDP, or that's what we mean. So the value of all the goods we produce internally within the country, that's what we mean by GDP. Now, people cannot, so in terms of what, yes, you can say somebody is probably worth more than a country. So US GDP is worth more than Nigeria. I think in particular, US stock market in value is worth more than the whole Nigerian economy. So the GDP is just a way of measuring the value of our country in terms of what we actually produce. So is what we are producing in quantity and in terms of prices. When we look at it holistically, what is the value of what we are producing as a country? So that's what GDP actually means in terms of value.
All right. A question says, is there a way to enable the non-oil sectors to contribute to greater economic growth?
Yes. So basically, for non-health sector to improve or to contribute better to economic growth, we have to look at ways of making business easy. Example, the ban on Okada riders. So when we ban the likes of Gokada, that's a way of limiting the growth of the non-health sector. Now, before the ban, the transportation sector in Nigeria as at Q1 was positive. I think it grew around 8%. But presently, that sector is growing at negative 15%. Why? Because you've implemented policies that that do not benefit those sectors. So basically, if you want to improve growth in the non-health sector, you need to look at how can you implement policies that would make business easy. The people that are into logistics, how can you implement policies that will make it easy? Recently, I think we all heard about a policy by NIPOS trying to manage people in logistic space. That kind of policy would not improve the non-health sector. So in essence, to improve non-health sector, we need to look at how do we make people in that sector, how do we make their lives better? How do you reduce their cost of servicing? How do you make production better? That's what will lead to improvement in the non-health sector. For industries, can we make lights more affordable? Can we make electricity tariff, can it be more affordable to people? Can lights be provided more consistently? Those are the kinds of policies that would lead to a better improvement in the non-health sector.
All right. So someone says, what can we do to create more demand for Naira?
So to create more demand for Naira, basically we need to find, or we need to make what we export quoted more in Naira. So these things that we produce in the non-health sector, the more we can say, oh, if you want to buy Nigerian goods, you must pay in Naira. If we can do that, it will lead to a situation where people will demand more for the Naira. Foreign direct investment. When foreign direct investment comes into the country, they bring in dollars. But when they want to set up businesses, you have to exchange the dollar for the Naira. So those are ways in which you can increase the demand for the Naira. Our exports, can we quote them more in Naira? Like I said, our export is mostly 90% oil. Oil is quoted in dollars. So our export doesn't translate into the demand for Naira. So we need to look for ways in which we can quote our export in Naira. Things like our textile industries, when we want to export them, can people pay in Naira for it when they want to purchase these things? Foreign direct investment, bringing more foreign direct investment will lead to more demand for the Naira. Like I said, for portfolio investments, whenever foreign investors want to buy companies in the stock exchange, they have to bring in dollars and exchange it for the Naira. So promoting foreign investments, getting our exports quoted in Naira would lead to a better demand for our Naira. A lot of questions.
All right, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you now.
All right. So the next question is, okay, so on a rider on what you said before, I'd like to ask, does that mean even service providers, like, we have a lot of Nigerians providing service to foreigners, maybe on all these Fiverr, for instance, all these work platforms. Would you encourage that we quote for our services in naira. So you are developing a website for a foreigner, for instance. You are developing something you get, or you are designing for a foreigner. You are doing a PP work somewhere. Would our contribution to the economy include asking to be paid in naira? Would you advise that?
So I think from a personal perspective, or personally, it might not be, if you want to make more money, it's better to say, oh, pay you in dollars, because you understand that the dollar is more valuable than the naira. So in that situation, it's better to say, oh, let them pay you in dollars. But if we want to lead to growth, that's why I was more specific in terms of goods. So for services, it's easier for you to say, oh, for a foreign company, pay you in dollars. But if the CBN comes to issue policies that say, oh, okay, when foreign companies want to pay you for any services, it should be done in naira, then that's when it's fixed. But in terms of policy, there is nothing that stops you from saying, oh, you want to be paid in dollars. Now, the trick is that because the CBN knows that it wants dollars, whenever the company pays you in dollars, right, once dollar comes into maybe your domiciliary account, the trick is that because CBN wants that dollars, when you want to take out the money, you can't take out that money in dollars. So, and once when dollars comes into your account, you can't withdraw dollars. So when you go to the bank to withdraw that money, the bank will give you at the equivalent rate in naira. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really make sense for you to tell them, oh, and pay me in naira, because when they pay you if they pay you in dollars, you stand a better chance of making higher margins. But in terms of development, where we want to see the economy going to, it's better for us to have a situation where most of our exports are being quoted in dollars. So I don't know if you remember some while back, CBN put out a policy of currency swap with China, saying that, oh, okay, you can, in terms of export or in terms of buying goods, you can trade, or you can do something like a currency swap. So currency swap would help more to stabilize the currency. I don't know if I was able to answer that question clearly.
All right. Okay, I think you were. So someone asked if the FX rate was at par with dollar, would we be interested in these investments? So I guess this means if the dollar wasn't so much higher, more valuable than the naira, would all of the either direct foreign investment or portfolio investment will it be something which we should bother so much about?
Well, to grow an economy, you still need those kinds of investments. So, like I said, foreign direct investments leads to creation of jobs. So when the likes of Nestle, the likes of Unilever, they come into Nigeria, they create jobs for Nigerians. So we actually need foreign direct investment. So it's something we actually need. Now, in terms of the currency, if the naira today was more valuable than the dollars, what it creates is that it creates more demand for our currency. So you find a situation where people are willing to hold naira. You find a situation where you can easily convert naira to any other currency, because people would want to hold the naira because it's valuable. So that's it for that question. So foreign direct investment is actually very important, because that's what creates jobs. When they come into the country and they set up plants, it's not only, even if they bring in expatriates, they will still have to employ Nigerians on the plants. So foreign direct investment is important.
All right, thank you. So someone is asking how the budget is approved. I think this question would carry it over to tomorrow when we talk about the budget fully. So you mentioned, so okay, there's been a conversation in the chat session around if you said $400 million or $400 billion. So is it the Nigerian's GDP, like how much Nigeria is worth? Is it $400 million or four
Oh,
hundred billion
it's
dollars?
billion.
$1 billion. So
Yeah.
so that is corrected now, $400 billion. You also mentioned that Nigeria is in 30 trillion debt. So is 30
Yeah.
trillion debt in naira or in dollars?
So the 30 trillion is combination of external and domestic debt. So what they usually do is that the external debt, you just convert it based on prevailing exchange rates. Then you can have a total idea of what it is in terms of naira. So the 30 trillion, if you convert it with the exchange rate, you have an indication of what it's worth in dollars also.
Okay, but the 30 trillion is in naira. So we are in
Yes, the
debt
30
of
trillion is
30
in a
trillion naira.
trillion naira.
Okay. Uh, Please hold on. I'm trying to get all of the questions. So someone says, do individuals have a role to play in changing the sorry state of the Nigeria economy? If yes, what are they?
So as an individual, to be honest, there isn't much we can do to change the state. It all has to do with policies. Are we implementing the right policies that will lead to growth? If I say today I want to be able to employ 100 people, or I want to bring people out of poverty, you still need a good policy environment that will allow you to do that. So, um, so it's except for um, individuals that, let's say, have a good, I don't want to misquoted, individuals that have a good network. So in terms of when you have people like foundations, so it's only the big companies or large companies that can actually try to create a good impact. That's why you have things like the Tony Elemi Foundation, Dangote Foundation. So those ones, so it's as a corporate body that you've been in business and you're strong enough that you can try to change the state of the economy. But as an individual, there is little we can do. So it all has to do with policies. What kind of policies can we put in place that would change the state of the economy? So, like I said, it's making if we make policies that make business doing in Nigeria much better, then as an individual, you can set up a company that would change the state of the economy or would help or create employment. For example, to register business and all those things, they take a lot of time in Nigeria compared to other countries. I think in ranking Nigeria in terms of the whole countries in the world, out of 180 countries, Nigeria is ranked around 145 in terms of doing business. So that is when we're close to the bottom. So that's to show you that we need to look at policies that would help businesses to do well. Then as an individual, you can now make good changes.
Okay, there's a question that says, how does closing borders help our FDI? So this person also referenced the recent call of Dangote to ban importation of tomatoes. How does this monopoly help the economy?
For this, I think you would have to put it in terms of context now. So this is mostly politically driven, and also there are also economic benefits. So, for instance, there was a while back when CBN governor placed a ban on importation of milk. So, in the strict and actual sense, there are some things that Nigeria shouldn't be importing into the country. So this doesn't have to do with FDI. So this question should be looking at it in terms of importation. Nigeria as a country, we shouldn't be importing tomatoes. Why should we be importing tomatoes? These are things we should be able to grow internally. So I would give you an example of how this works now. In the US or in another country, the cost of producing milk, let's look at it in dollar terms. In US, let's say it's about $5. The cost of producing milk in Nigeria, because of cost related, because of infrastructures, is maybe $10. Now, if you bring that imported milk into the country, it's as a disincentive to the domestic producers. So it tends to hurt our local industries. So in that way, we have to actually say if we actually want to grow as a country, there are some things we shouldn't be importing. We shouldn't be importing milk. We shouldn't be importing things that we can actually produce. So things like agricultural commodities, these are things we shouldn't be importing. But the reason why we have been importing that is because we've moved our country from being agricultural driven to oil driven. So oil is the main thing. So that's why we're in this kind of situation. But in the honest thing, if we actually want to grow this country, there are some things that we shouldn't be producing, or we shouldn't be importing rather. Or rather, we should cut down of our importation of some certain items.
Okay, I think that is quite clear. There's a question about the minimum wage. Does the increase in minimum wage affect the inflation rate? And is this a sustainable strategy?
So to be sincere, like increasing the minimum wage, it won't necessarily lead to a very large change or increased pressure on inflation. Minimum wage of, I think in Nigeria, if we look at it historically, maybe I'll try to share that after this session. I was able to compile data with some colleagues about the changes in Nigeria's minimum wage, comparing it to inflation as at those periods. When we looked at it on a month or even on an annual basis, the changes in the minimum wage did not lead to a significant pressure on inflation. To be sincere, Nigeria's inflation is mostly cost related. So it's mostly cost related. Factors that put pressure on our exchange rate. Things like closing the border, those are things that put pressure on our inflation rate rather. Because the cost of producing a good in the country is so high, that's why companies would increase the price of their goods. So in Nigeria, most of our inflation is actually driven by food prices, and that has to do with more structural related rather than a monetary kind of induced inflation. So that's the basic way in which inflation is basically rises in Nigeria today. So increasing the minimum wage would not lead to a sufficient or a large spike in the inflation rate.
All right, thank you very much. A question says, does our reserve look sustainable, or should we expect further currency devaluation?
So like I mentioned earlier, our reserves largely depends on oil prices. And for now, oil prices have been relatively stable around $30-$40. In terms of devaluation, the CBN has actually devalued the currency twice this year. So at the start of the year, the official exchange rate was around 306. They changed it to 361, and currently it's around 379 naira to a dollar officially. Now, so for the foreseeable future, we might not see a devaluation in the currency because the CBN they are looking at the CBN is trying to attract foreign investors through open market operations. So I don't really want to go on that. So it doesn't lead to it being confusing. So maybe at the end, I can also share some materials or information on that. But for the foreseeable future, our reserves is going to hover around 30 to 35 30 to 35 is it billion or 35 billion dollars. So I think currently is around 35. So within the end of the year, it's going to range between 30 to 35. So there is no real sign that the currency will be devaluated again. So like I mentioned, the currency has already been devalued twice this year. But for the foreseeable future, it should be since all prices have generally been stable and have not crashed again. The reason why it was devalued earlier in the year was because all prices crashed to, if we can recall, to as low as $20 to $10 per barrel. In a day, it actually went to around $4 in a barrel. So currently, because all prices are relatively stable, we shouldn't see any other devaluation, at least for the rest of the year.
Okay, I'd like to quickly round this up quickly. So someone asked a question that I think has been addressed. How do we halt the devaluation of Naira? I think this addresses it. Then someone says, concerning improving the GDP, the current value shows we consume more than we produce, right? If so, is increasing local production a direct solution, or are there other factors?
Yes. So that's actually correct. So to improve um we need to improve production. In actual sense, um Nigeria typically, at least within the last 2 years, we've actually been spending or consuming beyond our means or beyond our income level. Um, in order to try to mitigate things like that, we need to increase production. But again, the question now has to be how do we increase production level? So it goes back to some of the things I've mentioned. Um, in order to encourage businesses to produce, the economy has to be business friendly. That's the only way we can improve production, especially in this time of the year where we have a pandemic and how it has affected economic activities. We need to implement policies that would help businesses to produce more, encourage them to produce more, and encourage small and medium enterprises, small enterprises to grow to medium enterprises, encourage micro enterprises to grow to small businesses. In Nigeria, small micro businesses or the informal sector accounts for over 90% of enterprises in the country today. So that's too large. We need to find a way to transfer majority of those micro enterprises into small or to medium enterprises. That's the only way we can help to improve production or GDP levels.
All right. Thanks so much, Mobola. This has been a very insightful session again. For further questions, please let's head over to the Twitter page so we don't take too much of our time. We are already some minutes behind. Please send all questions to the Twitter page, or Mobola will be there to respond to them. Let's not forget that 11, and tomorrow we'll be going deep into the budget means, and we'll be analyzing the information government balances of the country. Also, we'll be going deep into the constitution tomorrow and understanding the role of the different arms of the government and also the citizens. So tomorrow we'll talk about our powers very well, especially as it relates to government. Let's make it a day tomorrow. Let's also ensure that we get other people to join. Registration is still on so that they can get the link to the class. And generally, let's have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow by 9. If you have your questions, please don't forget to ask them on the Twitter page so we can answer all questions today. Thank you.
How can we get the Twitter page? The Twitter page.
Okay, so on Twitter, we are at Detalium on Twitter. At Detalium on Twitter.
Sorry, there's a recording going on. I don't know if I can have access to it or if it will be sent. I initiated it, so I don't know if it's be sent to my email or yours.
So if it's sent to us, we'll check. But you can also you can always access this on our YouTube page.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So you can check the chat room. The link to the YouTube page is there. But we are at Detalium on YouTube, so the video is up on YouTube too.
All right, that's fine. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for the session.
Welcome. See you tomorrow. All right. The materials that the facilitators share, we'll try to get them across to everybody who registered for this session. As much as we can get from the facilitators, they'll be shared to everyone who registered for the session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Yes.
Thank you very much. It was an interesting session. Bye.
Okay. What? You are saving those? Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for this program. I'll meet you again tomorrow by 9. I really appreciate.